All right, everybody, you guys know what it is. The one and the only, the American Troll Podcast, broadcasting live and direct to you from North Hollywood, California. Damn, this is twice already in one day, Chris. My name is Gil, and I am the American Cholo. And today, I have another banger for you, man. I have a gentleman who, unfortunately, actually became famous for all the wrong things. He got famous. Well, the first time I ever really saw him was on a Netflix special. And what was the actual name of the Netflix special?
The Innocence Files.
The Innocence Files. He was arrested for a murder that he did not commit. He was completely exonerated. But what makes this situation much more, I guess, positive in a way, was that now he's out here. He's been out for, I think, over 10 years now, right?
13 years next month.
13 years. Mr. Franky Carrillo, thank you for coming on, my man.
Thank you, Gil. It's great to see you.
Now he's running for assembly seat. Is it 52?
52nd, yep.
52nd assembly seat. But before we get to that part of your life, let's get to the beginning part. Where were you born and raised at?
You know, I was born here in Los Angeles General Hospital almost 50 years ago. So my birthday is next month. Family was originally, LA based, but mainly as a young boy grew up in Linwood.
Okay, from the Linwood area.
Yep. So Compton, Watts, Linwood.
Was it a single household? You had siblings?
I'm the third of four. So two older sisters, myself, a little brother, younger brother. Mother and father, married family, and at some point, family separated. So, so it started off as a, unified front. So,
at what age do you remember when you actually moved into the Linwood area?
I think my earliest memories were already there. So I think,
so pretty much as a kid, you remember being there.
I think early on we were in Southgate.
Okay.
But it was like borderline Linwood, Southgate. But officially coming of age, realizing kind of what street I live on and what my address is. Now, it was definitely Linwood.
How was it when you were, let's say, like a teenager? Was it a gang area that you lived in, or did you kind of go towards the gang area?
No, I think it was definitely Linwood at the time. Was definitely there was a neighborhood where I grew up in.
Right.
So that was by default. I just kind of come of age there.
Yes.
I guess I'm not sure what parts of LA were exempt from gangs, but I think everywhere, reflecting back, it was everywhere you went was definitely turf heavy, right? You're in somebody's neighborhood, yeah.
So your career that, now that people know the story, began when you were 16 years old when you first got arrested for this homicide?
Yep.
And walk me through that. Are you at home when you get the house raided, or how do you get picked up?
Yeah, I'm definitely at home. So at the time we're living in Maywood, so we had moved away from Linwood, not too far from my upbringing. And 6 a.m, traditionally, law enforcement moves in very early.
Like the Ice-T song, 6 a.m, police at my door.
It was a Thursday morning, and they were banging, man. They were banging. I went to sleep on the couch that night prior, and so the metal door was really close where I was at, and they woke me up obviously, and I actually let them in. They couldn't get in, so I turned the lock, unlocked it. So.
And you open the door. At this point, do you even have a clue what's going on?
I mean, we had never been raided. This is the first time I've heard of raids. Other folks, in the community had been going through those experiences, but this is the first time I had gone through it. And the door came, flying open. Get to the ground. Guns are out.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's an experience like no other. I think when your home front, your safe haven is being invaded,
violated.
Violated. That's a good word. It's one where you are to some degree you want to kind of like, hey, what are you doing? But you're outpowered, you're outnumbered.
So now they pick you up, they handcuff you. Do they keep you in the house for a while while they're trying to talk to you and searching you, or they put you straight to the car?
Gil, my dad and I were home that early morning, and they started searching the house before I was still. He and I were still on the ground. They started, ransacking, and at some point they cuffed me while I was laying down.
Did you know why they were there at all?
No idea. Yeah, I didn't know. My dad didn't know, and I was 16, so they weren't trying to brief me as if I was an adult. So they were just like, okay, put on the, cuffed me and then took me away.
Okay, so now they take you to the police station. When is the first time you realized that they're investigating you for a homicide?
Soon after the detectives show up. So we went to the crime happened in Linwood, so they drove me back to the Linwood Sheriff's Department, and you go through the photograph and you get fingerprinted and so on. You get maybe there was no fingerprints, but there were definitely, you're in their
Yeah.
home turf, right? And so they put you in a room as they did, and then two guys walk in.
You still remember that? Right.
I do because I remember because it was a Latino homicide detective and a güero, and they both had cowboy hats on and boots. They were like cowboy guys. And I remember thinking like I had never seen a Mexican cowboy like that, or I don't know, it seems kind of stereotypical, but maybe not a cop. I didn't see a cop with a cowboy hat, so that threw me off.
You thought you were in Texas for a second.
I thought it was all like a show, dude. Honestly, man, it's just like who are these two guys with cowboy hats?
And in your mind, you're like, I didn't do anything, so I'm not really. You're just going through the motions.
As far not only going through the motions, but also, up to that point, I wasn't afraid. When they said, you have the right to remain silent, you haven't, they read you your Miranda rights. I was under the impression that, look, I didn't do anything. I have nothing to hide. Sure, what I'll waive my rights.
By this time, they had you in the gang files though, as a gang member.
They
yes?
did, yep.
And so now you're in there. You're 16 years old. Do they ask you and start telling you, hey, do you know this person? They start talking about homicide. How are they trying to get information out of you?
No, it's I think mine is a little bit different than the norm, Gil. They were really sure that I was the guilty party.
Really?
It wasn't nobody was trying to punch me or the lights didn't go off or on. It was just like, look, we got you. We have a witness. Come clean. We'll try to cut you a deal we'll talk to the judge for you. We'll try to make, go easy on you. And I'm like, no, you got the wrong person. It wasn't me. And they're like, okay, cool. Okay. Take him to LP. Like, done,
So how long after the actual homicide happened was it the distance between they picking you up?
6 days.
But within those 6 days, is that the time that they were going and showing the cards to the witnesses as far as your picture, or had they not seen your picture yet?
Well, so the story, I think like most investigations, the crime happens and law enforcement gets involved and they go through the preliminary motions about like, let's interview potential witnesses. Let's gather evidence. Let's maybe gun casings, just the standard, things that we can all think about. There was 5 or 6 boys who witnessed the crime. And during their first wave of interviews, they all gave fairly inconsistent testimony or reports. And they all basically said, it was too dark. We can't give you anything that is that can lead to potentially an arrest, and it happened too fast. So the first attempt to gather information yielded nothing, and then another wave of questioning and 3, 4, 5 until eventually they realized that one of the boys who was there had a relationship with the deputy sheriff, and so they brought that deputy in. And so once they brought that deputy in, the stories changed. So now with that specific deputy being part of the investigation team, the boy says, "Oh yeah, I know who did it," and so then the story completely changes.
It seemed like the deputies, especially after watching the Netflix show, that they were kind of pushing your picture on there and kind of influenced them, saying, hey, can you picture this guy out? One of these moves and point it out. That's kind of how you got really caught up in the mix with this, right?
The story, there's a couple of different versions, but at the end of the day, that's the story that happened, especially when these boys who are now men come back and say like, look, I was afraid. They coerced me. They didn't use that word, but that's what happens. Right. They brainwash you, whatever, do what they want you to do. But now that I'm, 20 years, whatever years later, I realize I shouldn't have done that. I should have been brave. I should have been strong, whatever. Right. So whatever the law enforcement was directing them to do, they just did it.
Right. So how long were you fighting your case before? Well, first of all, did they ever try to give you like a juvenile sentence, or they just said from the beginning we're going to try as an adult?
Yeah, Gil, this is 1991. So this is January of 91. And there was quickly tried as an adult. And I was going to Compton Courthouse. So,
and that was even before the trying juvenile as adult was kind of normal. I think they kind of normalized that in 94. So
yeah, I mean, I think they were doing this prior to the 90s, obviously. But, at this point now, they had, they thought what they had was a sure slam dunk.
Right.
Here's a kid that we have witnesses accusing of committing this crime. I'm sure they were thinking, okay, we're going to assess this. Yeah, we can get a conviction.
Were you the only one that got arrested for this?
I was. So the crime, the way that it was described, there was either 2 or 3 guys in the car, but I was the only one arrested. Yeah.
So how long from the day you first stepped foot into juvenile hall to the day you were actually convicted of the crime?
So, yeah, good question. Let me see. About a year and a half.
So you were fighting it for a good while.
Yeah. I was in LP initially, then went over to Central, Eastlake. 2 jury trials. The first trial was a hung jury.
You had 2 jury trials, really?
Yeah. So first trial was a hung jury. I was still a juvenile, and then the second trial, the one that I was wrongfully convicted, was 18.
When did it actually hit you that, man, I'm going to possibly, and I'm sure at that point you thought, that's it, I'm going to be sitting in prison for the rest of my life?
I mean, not until the sentencing happened. I think there was a lot of, being naive, being a kid, going through a system where, of laws, obviously, dictating what happens, what doesn't happen. I was really relying heavily on the fact that, whatever laws were going to dictate what happens next, were going to protect me. And so when the jury comes up with the guilty verdict, obviously I think my psyche wasn't prepared to understand that. I was really thinking, okay, they'll go through the gamut of, hearing witnesses, and they'll get down to the bottom of it, and they'll realize they got the wrong person. I'll go home. And then so when that's not happening, and then I go to the youth authority for 90-day observation, come back, and then the judge says, 30 years to life plus all these consecutive life sentences, then you're like, okay, this is, it's not, what I was envisioning is not going to happen.
Yeah, you're thinking, okay, I'm innocent. Everybody's going to find out I'm innocent. There is no way I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life.
You know what? Not only are they going to find out, my thinking was that this is why we're doing this. This is why this process even exists. We're getting down to assessing the evidence.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh, they'll just figure it out. No, we're in the weeds right now. And when that process doesn't yield the outcome that it's supposed to be, then you're thinking like, what the hell's going on?
So now you're convicted. Did they give you an M number?
They did, yeah.
So where did they end up shipping you off to when you went to Y?
Went back to what was that?
I said, how was your experience in the youth authority?
Yeah, I went back to SRCC.
Right.
Norwalk, the reception center there, and I was expecting to go to YTS. That's where I wanted to go, but they ended up sending me to DeWitt Nelson. Okay. And I was there for about, I don't know, maybe 6 months in DeWitt, and then I was something happened there, and then I was shipped over to YTS, and majority of my time was at YTS.
And when you're at YTS, what kind of ward are you? Are you thinking, I don't care, I'm going to do life in prison? Are you kind of calm? What kind of guy were you back then?
Yeah, good question. I definitely, when I think about those times in my transitioning from just being a free kid to now a ward of the state, I'm grateful that I can reflect back and think about how I was really aware that I needed to. This is a transition. This is now a new world that I have to acclimate to. Sure. Acclimating is maybe the word I'm looking for here. And so there was people that were there that I knew from the streets, from juvenile hall, or, just on the journey. Yes. They're already there. So they, a little welcoming team is there. I had family who had been in YTS. I heard of YTS, and so you get there, and I think mine was. If I was going to sort of classify me somewhere like, like the strong silent type or young for my age, but kind of wise, like a wise guy, so.
Well, you better be wise with 30 years that you're facing.
Yeah, but by this point, I think I had enough understanding about, the world that I was in, you don't just show up at YTS out of nowhere. There's a progression, juvenile hall, yes. County jail. And I realized, that I think by that point, maybe I hadn't realized it that day I arrived, but I realized that these are professionals. These people had been in foster care. They had been in camps. These are professional people who know how to do time. And, a lot of violators. And this is when you can still smoke. And it was...
Oh, yeah. We had weights and had program, and we're actually moving.
And it was, and I just, to give myself some credit, I knew how to maneuver in those worlds of not to say of poverty, but of like, you know, find ways of being useful or being productive. So I felt like I didn't thrive, but it was okay.
How many years did you end up doing the youth authority before you shipped out to prison?
I think I was here total about a little bit over 5 years.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so 5 years, you're pretty seasoned. If you're 5 years in YA, now how was the transition from YA to prison? Did they give you a heads up, or they just came in the middle of the night? Hey, you're shipping out.
Well, at the time someone had murdered
Oh, you were part of
I
the
was
ones
part
that
of
got kicked out of TS.
Yeah.
Okay,
so there was a staff member that was murdered, Miss Baker.
96.
96 exactly. So everyone was aware that there was going to be a mass exodus to CDC, and so at some point my unit, I was in at the time I was in G&H, and so they kind of went around the trade line, and I ended up in Delano.
So they just came in and started shipping everybody. Was the guy who killed her a M number or no?
He might have
I
been.
think it was a Weddle, but I don't know if it was an M number or
I
not.
think Ferris was he might have been an M number. Yeah.
That's why they probably kicked everybody out. So now you're shackled up. You're headed to Delano, you said?
Mm-hmm.
How was your mindset going from TS to prison? Are you that's just another day, nothing major?
I mean, I'm not doing it alone. There's a bus full of guys.
Okay.
My the whole tier. Maybe at this point, everyone's sort of like eager to get out of the YTS. It's been locked down for maybe 6 months at that point. So we're thinking, at some point you're thinking, the transition was going to happen anyway. At 25, and so you're moving towards the joint. I think what was interesting was the adult population was expecting this influx of these youth authority, maybe in some cases they're thinking, a lot of different things, right? So we get to Delano, and you kind of split up from there. But yeah, my mindset was, be through child, less talking, more listening, pay attention. The same old things when you kind of move into a new space.
Right. What was the biggest difference that you saw between YTS and prison?
I mean, this is reception center, so it's kind of like a limbo.
Right.
But I'll use that as an example. There were a lot of men who had been there before. Remember that? Like in this case, even though you had been in juvenile hall, you had been in other YAs, you were still like in the youth sort of realm, But now you're like with these adults who have stories about when they were in YA back in the day, and so you get a lot of mixed messages about like, why are you even back? That kind of talk, right? But I did notice that there was that these issues about maybe staying out or reforming were not as easy for some folks, and it was it was a different bag too of I think in YA there was maybe especially in YTS there was a specific kind of like standard of behavior. In prison it was kind of like a little bit of everybody. It was like a different rhythms,
Right, and you got, like you said, you have much older men. Now you're in there with some grown ass men, and
right.
And now are you looking at some of these guys and telling yourself, man, I'm gonna be this old in prison?
No, I didn't go that far. I think I remember one time, for example, when I was in Delano, and everyone's kind of waiting to go where they're going to go, right? But in there, I remember going to the yard, and there was this older dude kind of punking this younger dude. And I don't know why they came to me, but they're like, hey, the young guy, like, what do I do? What do I do, man? This guy doesn't, keeps messing with me. And I remember some older dude who was like one of the regulars was like just kind of observing what was going on. And I told the young dude, like, just take off on him, man. Like next time you guys go on the track, just like, stand up for yourself, basically, right? And he did. And the older guy kind of backed off. It was just like the older guy was just like being a bully, dude, basically,
Right.
And that ended. But the older guy, the regular who observed this kind of thing unfold, was like, that was good advice you gave this guy, man. You didn't try to tell him to stab him. Just basically just stand up for yourself. Don't let this guy bully you. And it was a very basic, just another man giving someone advice. But I think it it maybe surprised me that like this older dude who I thought was like an older man was asking me for advice, like, which I thought was weird.
Now you're in there. How many years did you end up doing in the actual state system now? About 15 or something?
Yep, about 15.
Now, what kind of inmate were you? Because when I heard, I remember the first time we actually communicated was a few years back, and I was trying to get a hold of you, and of course Frankie wasn't answering me, and then finally I said, "Hey Frank, hey, you were in Folsom, right? You were in the library." He answered me right away. My humble rooster said he saw you in there, that you were a pretty quiet guy. You stood to yourself, but that you were, even since back then, it seemed like you were determined to get out of prison. Is that what you were working on?
Yeah, Gil, it wasn't only. I mean, that definitely wasn't. I hope Bruce is doing well. That's good to know. I think at some point, I won't jump that far into Folsom, but I think what happened in the progression of coming of age inside of a carceral setting is that I'm grateful that I realized that not only was I trying to get out, stay alive, stay out of trouble, educate myself, I also most of all realized that I need to come of age. I think that environment. People sometimes forget that like you're growing, you're evolving as a person, and sometimes you have to shed behaviors, you have to adopt new ones, and there's many examples around you where there's like that 7-year-old veterano who's acting like he's 20 years old, so
15 some.
so like there's some examples, and there's the other example of someone who's even though they're in prison, they're educating themselves, they're evolving, and so there's a selection of kind of who you want to model yourself after.
Well, how did you do that? Because a lot of people that I see that go to prison, the evolving doesn't go towards a positive end. They end up evolving into a worse person, and especially when you have that much time, I would think it would be so much easier to say "F the world screwed me over." How did you not take that mentality?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I naturally am very optimistic.
Oh, you better be very optimistic, Frankie. They give
Well,
me 35 years.
Well, you're right, man. But I think there is that I don't know, I'm sure there's a new adage at this point, but like the glass is half full, right?
Right.
And I always try to find the silver lining in things, and I was always trying to be positive. There's times that doesn't work. You just kind of succumb to just being depressed or sad or whatever. But I think overall, what kept me on the straight and narrow was thinking like this is not for me. Like I'm not gonna succumb, or I'm not going to stay down. To some degree I'm gonna prove them wrong.
Now, while you were in prison, did you lose any family members? Because I would think that would be a real tough thing to go through.
I did. I lost number one with my dad.
Oh,
so
God.
midway through it, my father passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and thank you, Gil. My dad was my for many years of my life. He was my the only parent who was in my life. But other family members obviously had passed away. But it's if you're I was a lifer, so as a lifer you don't get the chance to go into the funeral parlor or bury your family. So that's I don't think so. But other folks can if they have a different sentence, or you pay, I think, at some point.
Yeah, you pay for the security.
Right.
Now, when was your dad passing away? How long were you down? How long did you even have a glimpse of getting out at that point, or did your dad actually pass away thinking you're still going to stay in prison forever?
Yeah, he passed in '99, so that was about midway. Well, maybe not midway, but close to the midway point. And my dad, Gil, my father was, my dad was born in Mexico in the '30s, and so my dad, in many ways, like many folks, just believe in truth and justice. That things are going to work out, or that if you do good, you reap what you sow. And my dad believed that, like, don't give up. Keep fighting for maybe just your freedom. He wasn't sure how to frame it, but just don't give up was his attitude.
Were you like feeling any type of guilt that it was any your fault when your dad passed away and you're sitting in prison and can't be at the funeral?
No, I think it was. I think surprisingly, thinking about my dad's passing, Not only was my dad my only alibi witness, but my dad in many ways was my the one who would push me, who would remind me,
Wow.
who would be. So I felt like, so I lost my alibi witness is dead. My dad's now gone. My cheerleader, I guess I can give him that. He wasn't there anymore, and he had a special way of doing it. He was more of a more classier about it versus well, I'm not sure what else he could have done, but he was just always like trying to be positive.
Well, I think that you definitely have a good chunk of your father in the whole aura of you are because, yeah, like I said, the way you carry yourself, the positiveness. If I didn't know you, and I'm sure many people who meet you for the first time and don't know your history, they would never know you've even been to prison. Just sound like a very laid back guy, very, very mellow. Do you get that a lot where people are very surprised that, you went to prison for so many years?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you know what? No, it's funny. I hear Chris is always laughing, man. My lady too. But no, but I will say this, man, is that I think people have this preconceived notions about those who've done time.
Yes.
And so, you've obviously done time as well, Gil. And I think when you have a full set of hair, us men who are lucky enough, we're lucky enough to have hair. They think, oh, he's not bald headed. They're thinking, oh, he has to be, shaved head. And if you have no tattoos that are visible, that's another indicator that either you were or you're not. And so, and there's other clues that people are looking for, missing tooth or.
I got that. Let me pull it out.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a bizarre thing how people are like stereotyping, right? So, or how you speak and a number of things. But so there's cues that we're all looking for those cues, right?
Stereotypes they're looking for.
So I think sometimes I lead with my story. I think it's if I would have been someone who would have survived a plane crash, I would have a T-shirt every day, man. Like, whatever, right? Some funny, But this is a tragedy, man. And when you survive a tragedy like this, the reality was you weren't expected to survive it. I mean, a lot of people who go through an incarceral experience, may it be a year or 20 years or more. The idea is that the dehumanizing experience, it's supposed to like psychologically break you, And so when I see folks like you, Gil, and other folks who can be an example of the human spirit and say, you know what, yeah, I've been through some stuff in my life, maybe my entire life, but I made the best out of it. I found a way to make the best out of a situation.
So, how far along was it after you've been convicted? Because I think you ended up doing like 2 decades.
I did, yeah.
Right? How long before those 2 decades were up did you start seeing, hey, I might have some action of going back to court and getting out? Was it through the Innocence Project? How did that all come about?
Yeah, I think my belief, my kind of like naive belief was kind of like the YA level, which is like after my wrongful conviction, I still believed that the system would get it right. Which is kind of like, weird to even say it out loud right now, but it's almost as if like your abuser will eventually love you. It's that kind of like weird sickness, And I just had this like unbreakable belief that this can be fixed. It was like this is something that can be fixed. I remember when I got to YTS, I forget who it was, but I shared my story with somebody, and they said, "Man, you got to make some noise. Just make some noise." And at the time, making noise was like writing letters, maybe a phone call. There was no, that was it. You're in the deep well. Making noise would seem to be like, that's 2 options, right? But I think what happened was that not only was I trying to make noise, but I was trying to convince people. At the time as well, is that I think there were people who were thinking, they all say they're innocent.
Yes.
And, no one's going to believe you. You have no equity, you have no money. What do you bring to the table, Franky, other than your, the story about like I was wrongfully convicted, and that can be very defeating, because as you can imagine, there's folks there who are like, man, why are you still trying to fight your case, Franky? No one's going to believe you. Why, And so even though you get that reality check. I'm grateful that I didn't listen. I still kept going,
Of course. So when did the Innocence Project actually take your case on? And did you have to write them?
So I thought, so my back to this makes some noise. So I thought that I would write the perfect letter. So for the next 15 years of my life, Gil, I wrote letters, I advocated, I did everything I can
Who
think
you
of.
writing? Everybody, anybody?
I was initially writing lawyers. I was writing ACLU. I was writing Oprah Winfrey, 48 Hours, Geraldo Rivera. I'm going that far back.
Everybody.
Whoever I thought had at some point in their life said, I helped the underdog, or I helped someone in what I thought was my situation, right? And some folks would write back, others wouldn't. And eventually what happened was that I was at Folsom Prison and I was a teacher's aide. And my boss, Tony Carter, was a GED instructor. So I was her assistant, would help the guys with their work, or I would, be doing stuff on the chalkboard or whatever, right? And Tony, she was about to do 20 years there as a teacher, notified me she's going to be retiring me. Just gave me a heads up. Hey, Frankie, I'm retiring. Maybe you start looking for another job. And so that was a Monday. And so Friday, on her last day of work, I asked her to do me a favor. And that favor was pretty simple. Like, hey, Tony, you know my story. You know what I've been going through. If you come across a reporter, anyone who you think can help me, especially a lawyer, would you mind just like sharing my story? And she's like, yeah, I can do that. I wasn't asking for anything like, leave me the key or like, what's your number? Like, it was just like, just do me a favor, And lo and behold, about 6 months later, she's at an event in Sacramento, and there was a woman there, Ellen Eggers, who stood and announced that she was a lawyer, and then asked a question at the event. And Tony said, "Oh, okay, maybe this is it." So went and spoke to her, and Ellen Eggers at the time was a public defender. She came to the prison a week later, interacted with me, spoke to me, met me, believed in me, had enough faith in me that then she went and got the Innocence Project involved at Northern California, Innocence Project at Santa Clara University. And then she got Morrison and Forster involved, which is an international law firm. So she had like the experts in innocence cases and then a powerhouse of a firm.
And how long throughout that process did it take for you to eventually get like, wind? Hey, I'm going back to court. I got action.
5 years.
5 years
5
from
years,
then.
yeah.
And through all this time, what are you doing? Are you reading documents? Are you trying to go through law books, like reading stuff, or what are you doing to keep your mind off of? I'm still here, and I'm doing this life sentence that I didn't kill nobody.
Yeah, so I'm still I'm at Old Folsom at the time, and I was working for the Braille Project, and the Braille there was a Braille program there that they would teach you how to transcribe Braille, regular books into Braille for the blind, visually impaired. And so I did that for a number of years, and then I became an optician. And so it's sort of back office, but you know how to make glasses for folks who need glasses. And so I stayed busy. I did that. I was a big avid handball player, so
I heard you like playing handball.
yeah, no, I love handball, man. It's a great sport. And I meditated. I was doing Tai Chi for many years of my life. But overall, I think I was preparing myself, Gil. Wasn't sure if and when I was gonna get out, but I had this idea of like, why wait until the door opens before I can get excited about it? Let me not tell anybody about it, but let me just pretend like I'm a short timer. And so it kind of worked out,
How many guys did you see come in and out? And you'd be like, damn, this guy again. And you're stuck over here.
Bro, I don't spend too much time thinking about that. But now that you're asking me, when I was in Donovan, I was in Donovan for a little bit, a couple of years. There was this guy, man. He might have been a white dude, and good-looking white guy. He was in prison, with all of us, and he was going home. And he gave off the impression that like life was waiting for him. He was gonna have a great life, and he had things lined up, and maybe had a family. Who knows, right? But he was given all the indicators that he would never come back. And when he came back, I don't know, whatever, to the same yard, whatever, a year later, I remember he spent a lot of time explaining to people like how whatever went wrong,
Right.
And I'm grateful that I had a chance to listen to his I don't know, his grievances, right? About like, I don't know if it was a pro agent or work was hard or whatever, but it left an impression on me about like, like what's really going on here, man? But there was a few guys who came back,
Yeah, I'm sure. I saw this picture of you. You're in the County Blues, but you have a certain smile about it. Was that the point where they had told you that they're overturning the case?
Yeah, I came back. I came back to the crime scene, my crime scene, which is the Compton courthouse. And it had been 20 years. It was a class reunion. All the witnesses were back. I was back. The DA was back. All the cast and characters were back. And Gil, when you are as I was trying to do everything I was in my power to manifest, pray, believe, never give up. And when I left Folsom, I remember my Sally, Perico, he's home now too. He's like, you sure you want to give all your stuff away? Because he was just trying to be like, a wise roommate,
Yes.
I go, yeah, I'm giving everything away. He's like, you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. And when I remember, and what I meant was, I'm not coming back. Like, this is it. I'm going to court, and there's a reason why I'm going to court. I'm not just going to, talk to the judge.
Right.
I'm not there seeking sympathy. I'm not there asking for a favor. We're back to get justice. We're back to make sure that I get out.
After all those years, you still believed.
I'm a believer, bro. I mean, it's maybe hard to, it's hard to imagine that nowadays. I mean, there's so many things that can be very disillusioning.
So you weren't about to taking the TV home and taking everything to the house, huh? You weren't that guy.
No,
I know you've seen that guy.
I brought some stuff, man. I brought some stuff back. I got, we all carry stuff back from
For
us,
sure.
but I definitely have my my box that I came home with, man.
So, did they release you straight from the county jail there, or how was the process once you knew? Okay, you're innocent. What did the judge actually say to let you know that hey, I'm coming home?
Yeah. So the judge. So just one step back. So when my attorneys filed the habeas corpus, prior to them filing it, this is a case of wrongful conviction. So the idea was that, like, look, the system got it wrong. So let's involve the players here. So one of those players is the DA's office. So my attorney said, well, let's meet with the DA's office and let them know of this error. So they did. They met with one of the DAs, Hodgman, Bill Hodgman to be exact. He's now retired, and they were able to convince him that what they had discovered yielded, or at least to some degree, should put it on their radar that they should maybe look into it themselves. So the DA's office at the time said, okay, well, look, we I don't think they said we believe you, but we're interested. They did their own investigation, and the results were that what we had said. So So my team confirmed it, the DA's office confirmed it, and they were going to do a joint petition, which was at the time was never heard of. The DA was going to say, sure, let's move forward to a judge, and both parties say yes, he should be released. And at some point, someone said, well, before we do that, has anyone notified the arresting agency, which is the sheriff's department? And so they said, no, we haven't, but we'll call them. And so they called them, and all hell broke loose. The sheriff's department said, who are the investigators, obviously, they said, don't let them go. Like, whatever you're doing, like, stop it. This is not, you're doing the wrong thing.
They were trying to stand on their conviction. Didn't want to.
I think looking back now, there was a lot of, they made the word about the exposure, because there was a Linwood Viking deputy gang involvement.
Okay.
And so maybe, Tanaka was one of the arresting officers in my case. Who's now,
was he really?
So he was the sergeant leading the raid squad. So, was he the guy cuffing me? No, but he was the one in charge of the OSS unit, so he was aware. And at the time, he was the number 2 under Baca when this all came back 20 years later. And so at some point, someone at the top of the DA's office and the top of the sheriff's office met, and they just said, like, you know what, let the judge decide. And so this is why we came back to court for a hearing.
And the witnesses actually came back, and did they testify on your behalf, or they just made statements?
No, Gil, I think the heroes in my story, there's a lot of different heroes and villains here, but the heroes are these young boys who had come of age. They're now fathers, they have careers, and, they have a lot, they have a life now. And for someone to admit that they lied, it doesn't matter. I mean, sometimes, a white lie, someone will go to the grave, I didn't say that, I didn't do that. But when you know that your lie caused someone to lose 20 years, potentially, I mean, I'm supposed to be in prison right now if this wouldn't have been corrected, that would have been what we're talking about. I think most people would have been like, nah, like, let's just leave it alone. I don't want to get in trouble. But they all came back, man. All but one. One guy didn't come back, and he gave a statement, but he didn't come to court.
Right. Now, when you were in prison, and did you ever have any ill will towards them, the witnesses?
I don't. I mean, my natural response is say no. I think that my thinking was that they were first mistaken, that they had made an honest mistake, that a crime obviously happened. There was a man who was murdered, and I just felt before we got into the coercion and all this other work what the sheriffs had done, I just thought like there's just some witnesses got it wrong, and so my thinking wasn't seeking revenge or I hate them or but that was more about my nature. That wasn't sort of my style to begin with,
Right. Now, I read somewhere that was there someone who was coming forward and saying they were the ones that did it? I saw that somewhere online. What was that about?
Yeah, so there was a so these are the folks who were actually involved in the crime have been to some degree or another have been exposed. And early on during my sentencing, so we're kind of going back to 1992 when I was convicted. At the time we didn't know what role he played, but one of the suspects, one of the actual guilty parties, came to court attempting to testify that he was involved and that I wasn't. And the judge, it only went as far as it was brought up in court, in open court, and the judge said, no, like, it's too late. Deal with it during your appeal, and he took off.
20 years later.
20 years later, yeah.
Wow, dude, that's crazy. So, up to today, has anybody ever been convicted of that crime?
No one has. So sadly, no one has been. The case has, I suppose, it's fallen into.
An open case?
It's an open case, but it's also, I guess, fallen into a what's that category? It's like not a cold case. I guess cold case. Yeah, cold case. Yeah,
cold case.
It's a cold case. The family deserves justice. The family deserves closure, I suppose is the right word here. And it falls back into the sheriff's department. So the investigators have to do their part, but their position is like, we did nothing wrong.
Right. And major props to the victim's family, because there's a lot of victims that would have looked at you, and regardless if you were not guilty or not, they would have said, "No, that's him. We're not gonna let this guy go free, and then nobody's gonna do time for it."
You're absolutely right, Gil. The guy's name is Damien. Damien Sarpy is the son of the victim. So the man who was murdered was in his 40s. And his son witnessed the shooting where his father was murdered. So talk about your father is murdered. You are a victim. You could have been shot too potentially. Damien and I wouldn't go as far as to say we're best friends, but we're friends.
Really?
And we not only do I respect him, but I admire him for assessing the situation. I'm sure, and I've heard stories that his family weren't aligned with him doing the right thing. I'm sure it's like, just let it go. Like, why open up new wounds or old wounds? Why all that kind of stuff, right? Which is easy. That's like a very easy response. But to see this man do the right thing and come forward is what we expect from everyone, right?
Yeah, because as victims, and I've been, all of us have one point or another, we're always looking for somebody to blame.
Right.
And it would have been easier just to, he's been there for 20 years. Why are we bringing this back out? And I'm sure there's some older family members that to this day, they still look at you and say, no, he's the guy that's involved.
Potentially, bro. Potentially, but I think use the restroom, bro.
No,
Can
absolutely.
we take a break?
Yeah, absolutely. Get your money. I'm gonna go through some comments.
Okay.
I'm gonna go through some comments real quick. See if you got any questions. Mister, let's see what we got in the building, man. What do you got, Mr. Chris? If not, we could actually open up now I'm gonna hit him up with the assembly. He's going from that to being in the assembly. Let's see what you guys got. There's always a price to pay for harm against holiness and persecution, whether it happens in a lifetime or an injury in your family line. The price is not up for discussion when it comes to it. Man, to me, I don't know if I could do that, Chris. I don't know if I could get all that time and come out as as with the peaceful feng shui that Frankie has. No, 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 no. I don't know. It takes a very special kind of guy to come out that way, bro. Because I know most guys. I know guys that come out doing half the time come out really messed up, dude. And especially if you know you didn't do it. That's the word. I don't know if I could. I'd be cussing out everybody in the boardroom. I'd be cussing out the judge. I'd be cussing everybody. Everybody's getting it. I'd be cussing out my mama. Don't be coming to visit me, mama. Let's see what we got. I'm not from Cali. Who's this vato? Well, Frankie, for you guys who don't know, was wrongfully convicted in I think he got convicted in 92. He got arrested in 91. Did 20 years, like 5 in YA, 15 in prison. Now he's running for state assembly for the 52nd district. So come on, Frankie, let's get you back in here real quick. So now you're out of prison, Frank. First of all, where's the first place you go eat, man? Or that you wanted to go eat? Maybe not the first place you actually wanted to go eat that you actually went and ate.
Well, the first place I went to was from the county jail. We drove over to Echo Park. One of my attorney's daughters had like a nice spread for us, So it was like a Trader Joe, Whole Foods. My first experience was like with like pistachios and dry, apricots. It was amazing, but it definitely wasn't what I was expecting. At least what I was used to.
Oh, what you're used to, yeah. Well, but you saw the transition of how jail became jail, bro. And I said to people too, like, what do you mean? I was like, in the early 90s, mid 90s, it wasn't so much jail. It was still, you had a lot of program, you had the TV, you're playing handball with the boys, you're playing spades, you're playing pinochle, you're doing the weights, you had the whole routine. And because I pulled up to YTS in January 97, bro, and I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. What is this place, bro? It's like, no weights, no movement, all locked down. It was like, damn, this is jail.
Yeah, you know what? It's and there's stories prior to my arrival, right? But I will say that there is something kind of I don't know. I don't want to make it over romanticize my time there, but it definitely was like a time warp. It felt like everyone was like in working out, doing 70s, 80s stuff. Like, the cholo was there, the dude with the hairnet and just very stereotypical, even for a guy who's in the story, who's like, we're there, right? Dudes walking the trade line, smoking their farajos, and the picture.
Blood in, blood out over there.
It was, it was what traditionally people expect of YA, and it's, I know I mentioned this before about like, I guess it depends where you are. I was never like a Paso or Nellis, but I think YTS was definitely, to some degree a gentleman's. It could have been, and it was, and also just like dudes who were just ready to go to the next level.
Yeah, it was more of the adult guys, and a lot of those guys had already been to the younger YA, so they already know what time it is. Right. So it was definitely some good schooling for you.
Absolutely, yeah. There was definitely a lot to learn there.
Going in there, who's out there? Somebody's out there knocking. Maybe it's the feds. So now you're getting out. You're out of prison. What is your mindset coming out? Are you thinking about working, or what are you thinking about?
Yeah, you know what? There was definitely no hard plan. Nothing was in writing. I knew that this was not in many ways it was the end of one chapter. I was out, but it was that quickly the beginning of a new life. And that I was really conscientious of that. I just wanted to go to school. I wanted to get an education. That was kind of like what was on my mind. How that played out, I wasn't sure how that was going to work out, but I ended up applying to LMU, Loyola Marymount University, and they accepted me. And for the next 4 years of my life, I kind of extended my carceral. I was 20 plus 4 is 24. Because sometimes it felt like I was doing time, but it was obviously not the time I was used to. Went to school, but I think what was going on even during school was I was just acclimating. I was just trying to find my place out here. I was folks were asking me to get involved in a lot of political movements. At the time, there was a Prop 34, which was first one I got involved in. It was the attempt to end the death penalty in California.
Okay.
And became the poster boy for that movement. It didn't pass, and then we tried soon after. A couple of years later, we tried again, and that was like my introduction to this world of advocates, people who were doing the work, like my attorneys were doing. People who came to my rescue. There was a whole group of people doing similar work, right? Not maybe freeing people, but trying to reform or trying to just make a difference, I suppose.
What was the biggest surprise, or like that time has changed from 91 to 2011? That's a big leap.
I think what I noticed the most was that. Yeah, we're definitely North Hollywood, man.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
What's like a 9mm or something?
Go ahead.
So, I think what I noticed the most was.
Go bang on him and tell him.
Is that here?
Yeah, let me do it.
Oh, it's the neighbor.
It's got to be not the neighbor. Well, tell him. Go bang on us. Hey, man, we're over here doing a podcast, homie.
No, this might be maybe the only place you'll hear this, but what I noticed the most was that people weren't fixing things anymore. So when I was a kid, we had a garage, and my dad had all the tools you can imagine. He had the welder and carpenter, mechanic. He was a jack of all trades, so he had all the tools to prove it. And so I did that too. Like I was my dad's assistant, whatever. But when I came home, I just felt like it was like a throwaway society now. We were it was the Amazon time, right? Like if you need like a new something, you dump the old one and you just got a fresh one.
For sure, that makes a lot of sense, especially like with my suegro. My suegro's old Mexicano. He'll keep everything and anything, bro. Like my wife would be like, you better get rid of it. My dad's gonna, because he's from the old school. Yeah. He's from the old school. I just recently I got him a big old barrel, put a spigot at the bottom so he can save the water for the for the rain.
Rainwater.
But yeah, he comes from even an older school that they gotta save stuff, they gotta fix stuff. With the generation nowadays, one thing for sure. You don't see kids on the skateboards. Right. You don't see kids out there playing football, throwing the ball. You don't see the kids playing the baseball on the block. You don't see the kids riding the bikes. We were riding the bikes, getting the butter knife to change the llanta out real quick, patch it up rough. You don't see that anymore, bro. It's a world of just like technology. Yeah. You get him, Chris? You banging him?
That's right, Chris. That's right. Yeah, but I mean, so that was my number one assessment. And for whatever reason, I thought it looked really clean. I remember someone saying like, you think it's clean? I'm like, yeah, it looks.
Well, not here no more. That shit is
well,
dirty.
Well, yeah, you know what? Things are definitely fluctuating, right?
Well, 2011 when you got out, believe it or not, was probably like one of the safest kind of cleaning era out here. Because out here, it wasn't too bad in the hood. It was actually, it was going away. There wasn't like the homies. There weren't even rivals. There wasn't that much gang graffiti anymore. It seemed to kind of be, slowly but surely. But in the last 10 years, bro, I don't know if you brought it back or what, Frankie. You brought the hood back with you, bro.
No. Don't blame me, man.
Okay. Something a little bit off topic, but on topic too. So, how did you come up with your dress code after getting out for so many years, Frankie? Did you go through different styles for a little bit until you found this style right here?
Yeah, this is my style, brother. Yeah. That's a great question, Gil. I like that, man. I remember the night I came home. We had a big party that night, and some of my family had some clothes waiting for me, and they were some I don't know if they were Levi's.
501s, Holmes.
They had the 501s. They had some Wallabies. They had some They had this Pendleton almost, right? And I'm thinking, I'm not gonna wear this, man. I literally wore some shorts that I had borrowed and a t-shirt and some slippers, And I wasn't ready to put that stuff on. I never put it on, and I think I might have given it away or taken it back. But I think my clothing, my attire, sort of started in the courtroom. Maybe to go that far back, and I'll give you just a quick little breakdown.
Please.
So when I got to Compton Court, my first it's like the final trial, right? And my attorneys had got me a suit and they got me the shoes and they said, okay, I get to the court and they said, okay, put this stuff on. I'm not gonna put that on. And they're like, why not? I'm not gonna put this on. I go, look, the judge knows I've been in prison for 20 years. There's no jury here. who am I putting this on for? Who am I trying to fool? Who am I trying to fool? And I just almost felt I felt so disrespected, Gil, that I needed to pretend to be free in order to get the justice that I deserved. And I said, no, I'm not gonna do it. And they said, oh, leave him alone. Like, okay, whatever. Like, walk in with that blue suit, then,
I see it.
And I did, bro. And I did, and I felt that not that I was, like trying to be, rebelling against my attorneys, but I just felt like I want to be free before I want to put a suit on or whatever. So anyway, so fast forward, I think what happened. I think I defaulted to like the Goodwills for a while. I defaulted to gifts. People were sending me, giving me clothing. I was in better shape back then, so I was, getting the workout clothes and stuff, But I think as life went on, I started wearing clothes that fit me. I think that was like the moment where it happened. Like, okay, I'm so used to baggy stuff because you're doing time, but you're wearing things now that fit your age, whatever, right? That it's appropriate.
Did you notice the whole like dress attire of the cholos out here? No more. There was no vatos were ironing their clothes anymore. It wasn't the same because you came from you literally came from like the peak of '91. That's when you're ironing your damn boxers.
But one of my last acts before I got arrested. So when I went to bed that night, it was school day was in the morning. So one of the last things I did besides watching TV was my ritual. I would iron my clothes before I would go to bed. And I remember when the cops came, the ironing horse was still out, and the clothes were still ready to go. Like if I was going to go to school, and that's just where they stayed, But yeah,
you never got to put them on and go to school that day.
Exactly, but it's interesting. Like I think about, it's interesting you bring this up because I think that it's one thing that I thought about in prison. So you see, news or you hear, you get pictures from the outside. And one thing that I noticed was that people were wearing, the Budweiser T-shirt and walking around with chanclas or whatever, right? And I felt like, how do we get into a world where your private attire, like something you would wear at home, you break it out into the mall. You're just walking around, and
oh yeah. Nowadays, I had that conversation with one of the younger guys here on the podcast, and I was telling him, dude, what's up with you guys wearing PJs? Now you see guys wearing PJs to go to school, wearing PJs to go to the gym. And I think maybe it's generational, like how maybe the guys in the 20s and 30s when they were, everybody wore a suit, and the 40s and 50s started coming in like, damn, these guys ain't wearing suits anymore. I think, or maybe we're just, getting too old and out of our time.
We're getting too old, man. But I hope the pajamas don't hit, man. I hope that goes away,
I don't know. I had some on the other day. I told my wife, yeah, these are pretty comfortable. I think it's just laziness and people don't want to put on some jeans.
Yeah. No, but I think, I think people definitely judge you by what you wear.
Of course.
I think if you're conscientious of that, Gil.
Of course.
I mean, like I was thinking today, I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna put a jacket on. Like, it's raining now.
Yeah, I was ready for you either way. I had a jacket on earlier, but I was like, no, this is a better feel right here.
It's casual, bro. Like, and I feel like I've known you for a while, man.
That's
Although
right.
we've talked once or twice on the phone, but I feel like, you know what? Hey, I'm coming to my friend's house.
That's right, brother, for sure, man. How was it? And after this, we'll start talking about the politics side of you now. How was it coming out of the time machine when you were young? And we're almost at the same age. We grew up in a generation. I think a lot of people really don't realize this when we say this. I think it's kind of like just a cliche. We were striving, many of us, to go to what you did, go to prison. We were striving. We wanted, for us, going to prison, especially on a hot one, was like going to Yale, going to Princeton, going to a major university and saying, I made it, right?
Yeah.
How was it for you after making it, seeing what you went through, and then coming out and seeing a lot of the guys you grew up with, and now they're either not longer here, they're either on drugs, or fast forward and seeing their life? How did that affect you when you saw that?
Yeah, that's really good, man. There was only a couple people who remembered me.
I bet.
I come from. I think one of my sayings is that, like, I know a lot of people, or a lot of people say they know me. I have a lot of friends, but I'm kind of like a loner, man. I've always kind of been that guy. Maybe a little popular in school or just in the neighborhood, wherever I go. but I kind of roll kind of with a small circle. But I remember thinking, man, this tragedy strikes me at a very young age, and I didn't develop like those strong relationships. I envy people now who have like these lifelong childhood friendships. It's like, wow, what a beautiful thing. I kind of envy them a little bit to be like, wow, you know, you kind of came of age together and you're still together.
Right.
And in my case, there was a good friend of mine, Anthony Morrison, who wrote it out with me. He was a guy a couple years younger than me, and he had moved away to Utah, and he's a success story, and I leaned on him as a friend, and so when I came home, he was there to greet me and so on. So there was one example of someone succeeding, but you're right. There was a lot of folks who had. I'm not sure. If it's drugs or the pressures of
Just
society,
the lifestyle as well.
yeah, and I think it's overwhelming. Maybe I think sometimes people, back to the point we were making earlier about people. Even I thought it was only a prison dynamic, but I think it's also a societal dynamic on the outside, where people forget to mature. They're so caught up in their drama or whatever whatever mask they're wearing that they forget. Oh shoot, there's a person underneath this mask, and they forget that person needs to kind of come of age as well. And so there's folks who are stuck in these ruts, and so I don't say it to criticize them, and it's hard. It can be hard for all of us, But there's still hope. They're still alive. But for those who have passed, it's we only live once, man.
For sure. Now let's talk into where you are now, Frankie. You're running for Assembly Seat 52.
Correct.
And where exactly is that location?
Yep. So at the heart of it, I call it Dodger Stadium. Okay. So it's Echo Park. To the west would be Silver Lake, Los Feliz, a little bit north, parts of Glendale, and as far as like East LA, Eagle Rock, Highland Park, Lincoln Heights, you can imagine what we're talking about. So it's majority Latino historically in that area.
Right. Now, what made you want to run for that seat?
Well, I think obviously there's stories behind that. I had ran for Central Committee. LA County has I'm not sure if you're aware with. So there's a Los Angeles County Democratic Party,
right?
And Central Committees exist throughout the county, the country, but here in LA County is the largest one. And so I ran for that, and you're on the ballot like everybody else if you're running for a public office, and I won. And that got me into sort of the mechanism of the party or parties, and everyone has them.
Right.
And you start doing work there. I became the co-chair of the Judicial Interview Committee. So when an attorney wanted to become a judge, they would come and see us. I was part of the executive board of the party, did some work in D.C. and the DNC for Biden. And then you just kind of get involved, all these different things that this doesn't work without people, right?
Correct.
So I'm saying all that to say that you get a good schooling about what's going on, right? And so I think what propelled me to say, like, what, why not? This kind of why not attitude. I really saw, Gil, especially coming here to your podcast and talking to you, that there is a lack of representation in the Latino community with people who have a story like me.
Absolutely.
I commend, you mentioned Yale and Harvard and Princeton. I commend those who go there, who look like us, but reach that level of notoriety when it comes to their education. Right. I commend them, but I didn't go to Princeton. I went to prison. I didn't go to Yale. I went to jail. Yeah. And I think that I think when I think about that, I realize that there's a subculture of people that you and I were part of, who matured out of.
Yes.
A lot of folks lived in subcultures for a number of reasons. Maybe it might have been poverty or broken homes or whatever. That doesn't have to be gangs or incarceration. And maybe they don't feel that they're part of the overall culture, Right. And there's folks who represent all of us, But I think we're definitely at a time in our society in this country to bring in someone like myself to represent the people, all the people, obviously, right, in this district. So not only folks who have this experience as I do, but I look at it as something that, like, what better place for where I can give back to apply the things that I've learned. If it's standing up against these powerful agencies or lessons about humanity that I learned, then to find a way to impact society.
So let's talk about some of the some of the issues. What's your stance on gun reform?
So gun reform is obviously it's a federal issue. It's
Yes.
obviously it's grander than just like the 52nd, right? But you know, I think it's about you know not doing away with guns, but making sure that there's like these checks and balances.
course,
Folks
yes.
who go through the process of a background check, who have been trained to own and fire a gun, should definitely have access to a weapon, right?
Are you pro concealed weapon? If you can, pass through all the hoops and
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I think I'm definitely in the ballpark or in the on the side of like these huge weapons of these rifles, these assault rifles.
the ARs and stuff.
And there's other forms of other calibers, higher or lower. Like if you're not hunting, large animal, or you're not, I'm not sure why you even do that. But regardless, like that kind of caliber of gun.
Well, I think what it is though, I think for the sports guy who has that AR, they're just fun to shoot. I mean, it's just for sport and it's just fun to shoot. And also maybe in other states, it's much easier to get your gun out there
That's
and
true.
shoot. And California has rural areas.
Yep.
I think it's just a fine balance. I just think that California a lot of times goes way too far and wants to,
Yeah, that's why I'm not saying like do away
No,
with it.
no,
Like,
you're
I mean,
not.
it's obviously like we live in Echo Park, but I also own a home in the northern part of the county in Lake Hughes area, and obviously it's a different world out there. So I understand that there's folks who have from young children, their fathers, grandfathers, they're sportsmen. There's folks who go hunting for a number of different deer, whatever, right? And so I understand that, but I think there's definitely has to be making sure the guns don't get into the hands of
course.
folks that we know, right? I mean, the folks who are just out there to maybe potentially at some point in their lives
Or
should
anybody
not
who
have
has
had a
any
gun.
kind of mental stuff and they shouldn't be
Oh,
getting
absolutely,
out the
yeah.
top. Affordable housing. What's your stance on it? I personally feel that every politician, I don't know if you, so that's what I'm saying in front of you, every politician that you will speak with will always say, we need to do something about affordable housing. But that's almost, it's just like, getting a little BB gun, a little squirt gun to try to turn off a fire because no politician seems to really be doing anything about affordable housing.
Yeah, well, I'll start off by saying, Gil, that even though it might seem like a good idea, when I see, I'll go with the homeless first.
Yes, please.
When I see that these sheds have popped up around the county, or
The unsober is what I call them.
unsober. Oh, the answer. Oh,
The unsober. You can't call them addicts anymore.
no, but bro, I think for someone who's been confined in a box,
Right.
to see that the box is now the standard, even on the outside,
Yeah.
I don't see that as an answer. I don't see that as it's a Band-Aid. It's something cool for like, oh, there's something to keep them out of the rain or whatever. But I think that for someone who's been clamoring, I want to go home. Home. The thing about people needing somewhere to be the king and queen of, somewhere they can call their home,
Right.
is very important for like the development. Going back to this idea of like coming of age, moving out from your families, but affordable housing, absolutely. I think that it's come down to those who can afford a house and those who can't.
Yeah, at this point in California, nobody can like afford like here in North Hollywood. I think the average price of a home out here is like $700 to some $1,000.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money,
It's a lot of money.
right? And from what I hear from most politicians, and they use this as their scapegoat, they say we have so many people unhoused, we need more affordable housing, and they've been saying that for the last 10 years, right? And they've spent, I think, in LA alone, like I don't know, $14 billion.
Yeah,
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, no, it's I think about it, and maybe I think about it a little bit differently, but and I have an older son who still lives with his mom.
Okay.
So the idea of somebody who is going to have to keep up with their monthly expenses and then save money for potentially having enough for a down payment. Especially we're talking about now close to $1 million. You know, depends where you are. It's a lot of money, and you know, there's only a certain amount of people who can inherit potentially a property.
Right.
But what I worry about is that, you know, it's not only about if you're lucky enough to have a home, it's about like, you know, you have to furnish it. There's upkeep, there's taxes, there's paying for the trash, there's water. So it's not just like, oh, I'm in a home.
The gas price in the cars nowadays, it starts adding up.
It's there's a lot going on there, you know, and you know, there was a time when since I've been home that they're talking about like minimalists, people who are like, you know, who don't see the home the same way that I see a home. So I see a home as like your oasis, your castle, whatever, right? There's people who are coming with these ideas about like home is just where you go sleep and then you go live your life, and that's kind of like a young maybe way of thinking about it. And I can appreciate that, but someone who's, you know, soon I'll be 50, I think about like, you know, when I'm getting older, what's going to happen to me if I don't have somewhere to rest my head, or my family to rest their head? What's going to happen to us, you know?
What's your take on these tiny homes? We have 3 here in North Hollywood, which is those small sheds. I think each one's about 80 grand to build, quote unquote. My thing is, and especially if you were to get into the assembly, why is it that these type of homes and the type of shelters that they built, like here in the city of North Hollywood, we have countless numbers of shelters as well. Why is it that they're not being built in Pacific Palisades? Why is it not being built in Brentwood? Why is it that they're not being built in Bel Air? These are all LA cities.
Right.
You know, what makes them so special, aside from what we know, is they have money. Why don't
And
they
clout,
why don't they put some of those places over there?
Yeah, no, you're right, man. You're absolutely right. You know, that's kind of what I was referring to, Gil. You know, for someone maybe who's never been incarcerated, they would see that as like a wonderful thing. Like,
It's every Tecato's dream, Holmes.
but to have a mini yard, it's a yard basically. You're fenced in. I'm sure there's a gate, or someone there who's manning the gate, letting you in and out. You know, and there's rules, I guess. You know, for someone who's needing somewhere to be, you know, I'm not gonna knock that. Like, you know, it's a great thing, right?
Yes.
But it's not long term. If someone needs to catch their breath and have somewhere to, you know, be assigned this one of
Absolutely.
these sheds, these tiny homes, that's wonderful. But I think you're right. You know, the answer doesn't lie here in North Hollywood or Echo Park, right? There should definitely be.
Do you believe that at the very least, some of these places where they house the unsober, they would at least get drug tested every once in a while?
You know, I don't know much about like the rules of what you have to do to stay there, but I would assume that there would be some rules. You know, maybe I know that I've been to one here in the valley where there was even like where if you had a pet, you can have there was like a dog run
for
and so on. You
sure.
know, but I don't know. I think it seems like it's a given that there would be some kind of rules.
Yeah, but that's the crazy part. I think the way it works out here in LA, if you're trying to get some money for it, they make sure that part of the deal is you don't test them. And I'm like, what sense does that make? You got to test them. In other words, that way you give people, you know, I'll give you a little rope, but hey, you got to show me it's give and take. When you're just giving rooms out, it becomes like a party place.
Yeah, you know, I'm also a commissioner for the county. I oversee the probation department, and there's been when you say that, I think about the work that I do there, and it's really about accountability.
Right.
You know, there's folks who, you know, I think we should all be held accountable
Absolutely.
for, you know, I think that's not, you know, strange for anyone to say. You know, we kind of hold each other to that standard, and I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Like, hey, like, you know, we want to help you, but you have to be accountable as well.
Absolutely. Chris, let me get the phone number up there. Gil, was he financially reimbursed for the 20 years of being falsely accused?
I was. So California at the time, if you can prove that you were wrongfully convicted, they give you $100 a day for each day you were there. So that's like you know, that's whatever it is, a reward for staying alive, right? You know, it's your
$100 a day?
It's gone up to like 140, I think, but at the time it was $100, you know. But then that was one part. Then I filed a lawsuit against the sheriff's department, and I won. I didn't win. I settled hefty multi-million-dollar settlement. And really, Gil, I say that, and I've never said it before, but I've been thinking about it. That settlement was supposed to be hush money. We're gonna give you some money, go away, just go live your life, let it go, whatever, right? And so I'm still here.
Did you ever feel any threatened from them at all?
I used to. There was some PTSD that I kind of experienced early on. Whatever reason, like looking through windows.
I bet.
Just some basic stuff. But obviously, I think as a kid, you see a black and white behind you. That seems to be a natural get the heart pumping.
Absolutely. How are you now with that? Are you?
I'm better now. I've been I got good friends who are law enforcement, and our friendship sort of helps with that too.
Did you have to come out and get some kind of therapy, or do you get therapy? Talk to people?
Yeah,
or-
I was. Yeah, I definitely did. I was seeing a therapist, multiple therapists throughout my life, and I feel like I've been the therapist, in my friendships, I got the good advice or whatever, right? But I definitely am not a professional therapist, but I'm a good listener, and I think that when you go see these therapists, it's more about maybe less about what they're going to say. It's more about they're allowing you to share the things that you've been holding in for such a long time.
Right. So what exactly do you do at the probation? Is it the department that you're working with?
So I work for the county.
Okay.
So the county has there's many commissions that exist. This one here, it's been about 4 years in the making now. It's the first in the country of this type. And the commission is designed to oversee the probation department. It's a probation oversight commission. And the idea is to, not to do probation's work, but just to make sure that what probation is doing is done right. And probation has like a lot of big agencies, sheriffs, can be healthcare, can be anything that's been around for a long time. It's been doing it for a certain way. There's times that they fall into these ruts about doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, and so we have our hands full.
I had Nathan Hockman on here right prior to you a couple hours ago, and he's running for district attorney in LA. And I asked him, I'm going to ask you the same thing. What's the plan for all the juveniles that are going to start now doing time back in California? Because for a good chunk of years, they were just sending them off to prison, charge them as adults. Is there a plan yet? Because they're going to need to implement some type of youth authority. It doesn't have to be named youth authority, but you're going to have thousands of kids looking for a place, and you can't house them in El Padrino. You can't house them in Silmar. So is there even a plan in the probation department to do something with all these kids?
Yeah, it wasn't called the California Youth Authority anymore, but it definitely was.
Juvenile justice, I think they were
The
talking
JC, yeah, so that was in place. A couple years ago, that shut down, and the plan that's in full effect right now is that each county has to keep their own.
Boards or
Each
what?
each county after they've been gone through the process, sentenced, you're not shipped out anymore. You have to find
Housing for them.
an institution that rehabilitates, like a mini YA in each county.
But no more state is what they're trying to avoid.
So yeah, so the state is not doing that anymore. Each county has to do that. And so for here, for example, it's called the SYTF is the new name. And so LA County, Campus Kilpatrick has become, and Silmar Juvenile Hall has become the default
I've
for this,
heard.
And so you still get sentenced if you commit a crime if you're a kid, but you don't go to YA.
Yeah, but those places, as you know more than most, they're not built for that. They're not built to house somebody long term and be able to, give them a trade, give them some kind of teaching. So if anything, it's almost like they're doing their time in the box.
Gil, I think the problem that we've seen is that, at least for me, my take is that it's not what's happening, what the conditions are, fancy curtains or silk sheets, whatever. It's not that kind of stuff. It's more about the attitude of those who are there to do the work. So if probation is used to housing you post depo, which is before you're sentenced, that's kind of like their responsibility. And then for like the juvenile halls, then you go to camp, and then that's all they kind of got, right? Either camp or juvenile hall.
Right.
Now they have long-term care, which is SYTF. Now they have to watch you come of age. They have to provide you with things that YA would provide us when we were there. programming, education, trades obviously would be one that seems to be something people would gravitate towards.
Right.
And they're struggling to meet that. That's
Of course.
yeah.
To me, it's just it would be like a mechanic setting up shop in somebody's knitting room. Like this is not made for this. No, juvenile halls were made to not house you long term, kind of get you in there, go to court, and figure out okay, you're gonna go off to camp, you know, it's this. Especially even the way the they're not cells, but the way each unit
Yep.
is made. It's not made for that. So I mean, they
It's
gotta
tough,
make
man.
something, right?
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, this is it's
like
a huge problem. Some other counties are doing a good job. So
Well, because they're smaller counties.
they're smaller counties, but so for example, here in LA County, we have a maximum of about a little over 300 youth, you know, who are in the care of the probation department. Maybe when I was there might have been, I don't know, 5,000 easy. So we're talking about now into under 500 people there that they're caring for, and they're having trouble. It's the same department; it's even gotten bigger, but they're having trouble managing these programs or these different sections of it: juvenile hall, camps, SYTF, and that's just the juvenile side. They have an adult side. They have a lot of things under their care and people under their care. But more specifically about these institutions, Gil, I think my concern is that these youth are sentenced to live out whatever term that they got, and the expectation is that maybe when they were in the state level or YA when we were there, but now in the county, that falls on at this point now probation to offer these programs, and I think it's I think it's one of the things that we're failing as a county, that we can't meet that goal.
Is it financially you think they can't meet it, or maybe they just don't have what it takes to kind of envision what they got to
I
build?
think it's a culture problem. I think like what we talked about, they're trying to do their best that they can, but they're just, I think, culturally not ready, and it's sad, but it's not about get ready. It's like you should have been ready.
Yeah, well, it's a huge machine they have to build, and you know, obviously, listen, the youth authorities. I'll say this: yeah, it was a free for all at times. It was crazy, but the youth authority really helped me kind of save my life because it stopped me from going to prison, where all the great brainwashing starts beginning, and you think this is the life, this is what it is, and it actually gave me time to grow up, and your brain started to mature and say, wait a minute, I'm doing something wrong, but at least you did have, like, you had the car stuff, you had fire camps, you had programs, you had stuff, and there was something that was just the knuckleheads, right? But I think
you're right.
I think you would have to you almost have to take those kids away from the juvenile hall system, because even in the Y system, you still felt more of an adult. You felt more of yourself. I think if you leave them in the juvenile hall system, you're gonna have 20-year-old kids acting like 16-year-old kids.
And I'm focusing on one dynamic here, right?
Okay.
I think that I think there's expectations, right? So if probation has said, okay, well, like it or not, it's been mandated that everyone comes back to the county, and they had a couple years to prepare. And when you drag your feet or say this is not going to happen, or you try to fight it, and then it still happens, you're already behind a year or two. But the idea is that they're in their care. And for me, my concern is that if they're in whose ever care, this case happens to be here at LA County, there is a lot of money that has been allocated to make sure that programs are in place.
Absolutely.
And that the rehabilitation that we expect from these youth to experience happens, with the outcome that when they get out, because they're going to get out, that they can either move into university, go to school, transition back into society, as they'll still be young, obviously, but be successful.
What is something that, let's say, back in your Y days, that you would have liked to see implemented, or not even so much even back in your Y, like in today's day and there, what would you like to see in some of these juvenile facilities?
Well, I think when I was there, Gil, especially when it came, even in YA, but when I was in Central Juvenile, I'll give you a good example.
Yes.
I remember majority were men with last names like Ochoa, Buxton, Bennett, you know, many more who were just adults, who were just realized that their jobs are more than just being a probation officer. They were mentors. They said things to me that today I still remember. They planted seeds. They were just like, they were just doing what adults do, you know. And I think that we moved away from that. We moved away from that type of interaction. Now it's more like you're just overseeing, you're just like supervising versus engaging.
For sure.
And I think that's a cultural dynamic there, but it shows up in a place like these institutions where, you know, it's a fine line about like being over familiar or you know, you can't befriend, you know, the youth, whatever. But when I'm not talking about that, I'm just talking about someone who is just acknowledging you and still sees you as a human being, you know?
Absolutely. Somebody really mentoring you.
Yeah, I mean, is that what you're being hired for? No, but I think by default, if that's your nature, that kind of just happens.
What's your thoughts on having a system like they would back in the days? I'm not sure what back in the days it was, but when somebody would, you know, let's say you go and you steal your neighbor's car and take it out cruising and all that. Would you be up for like having it where you go to some kind of boot camp or something, and eventually you can even like join the military at some point?
Yeah, I'm sure you can join the military now. I mean, I've folks
Well,
who...
yeah, but there's some kids who a lot of times what we're looking for some kind of structure. We're looking for some, you know, especially as young gang members, let's say, that for sure. So to me, it's almost like, man, listen, you want to be all gun ho, you want to do this, brother, you can do this. You're gonna get a pension, you're gonna get this. You go do a few years if you want, go travel the world, and after that, if you don't want to be in the service, it's better. It's better to kind of school them that way than to say, all right, homie, you're gonna go to the joint, you're gonna get some school.
Oh no, I agree. I think those are the lucky ones. I mean, quite honestly, I think folks who I know who had that opportunity and said, hey, like, look, the judge had some mercy on you, basically, and said, you know, I'm gonna give you a break. I'm gonna, you know, not send you to prison, but you have to go to boot camp, whatever, or eventually go join the military. Yeah, I mean, for folks who, I mean, I'm not sure if that's still happening or not, but I wish it would.
Right. How about what would you like to see and that you would think would help people coming out of prison to succeed?
I think it has to start before they get out.
Okay.
I think that if you're waiting for the door to open before you start thinking about what's your next move or what you want to do, I think it's a little too late because it's live. There's you know, we're live right now. There's no taking it back or saying, oh, man, send me back for another 6 months so I can think about it. No, you're out, dude. Like, let's go, you know. And I think that there are some you know, when I was there was like this pre-release program, and those who were invited to go there were dudes who had a couple months to go, if that. But I think if that was expanded, like when you arrive, you're already thinking about getting out, and you're preparing yourself psychologically, obviously, maybe some job prep.
For sure.
Maybe, I mean, a number of things you can do to work on yourself. But I think what can happen now with the system as the way it is, I think I think loosening the stigma, and I think it's already happening. But I think about like something that I'm doing. I'm running for public office.
Yes.
I think about the ripple effect that it would have. I think it's gonna be a positive ripple effect. But I think the an example of folks who have been outsiders, who have been the underdog, incarcerated or not, to see someone who can elevate and to be of service and can be helpful. I think a lot of especially men fall into the category of, I need to be tough my whole life. I always have to be ready for whatever, right? I think sometimes we have to be step back and reassess, maybe redefine ourselves and say, like, you know what, hey, that's not me anymore. I'm just a nice guy, and I'm gonna do nice guy stuff, right?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Look at Chris, man. You know,
how many kids you got, Franky?
I got 3 children.
How old are they?
Theo is 32 years old. He'll be 33 in April.
So he was obviously born when you were in prison.
Yeah. So when he was born, I was at Central Juvenile Hall. I remember one of the Michael Bennett, one of the POs. You know, I got the call. It was April Fool's Day, and you know, we spent, I don't know, a couple hours crying in my room, and he was, you know, he was a dad, so he was telling me about like it's gonna be okay, that kind of stuff, right? So shout out to Michael Bennett if he's still alive, man. My 10-year-old Akiva, he's 10. You know, he's a 4th grader. He's another amazing kid. You know, my 2 boys there, and my little one will be 7 soon, Frida. So that's my
Man, look at you living like a widow. You're over here. The
yeah,
kid's at 40.
man. I know, right? By default, dude.
How's your relationship with your oldest?
You know, I wish it was better.
Of course.
Yeah, I wish it
of
was better.
course.
You know, I think what happens, Gil, is that I sometimes forget that others also suffered when I suffered. You know,
Absolutely, Frankie.
I think I made the mistake of thinking I was the only one who was in that cell. But I think I was absent from the world, but I was really absent from my son's life.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah, like I was telling you a little bit off camera, one of my homies, that the one that drew that one, right? That he just barely got in contact with his daughter, hasn't really spoken to her, and I would say, I think he's been down for about 18, 20 years. He hasn't spoken to her about 18, 20 years, and just now she's an adult and they're speaking. And I talked to him on a regular basis. I talked to him last week, and he was telling, man, it feels so good to talk to my daughter. I didn't realize how much she missed me in her life. I said, yeah, bro, you're her dad, bro.
Yeah.
You're her dad. So I could see that with your son as well. I mean, the horrible part on all this too, it's like you weren't at fault either.
yeah.
You know, but
It's hard to it's you're right, Gil, and I think it's I'm obviously not the only one. I think this is a very universal thing of being separated from your children for whatever reason, but especially being incarcerated. You know, it's I see now on social media, or I hear stories about the prison system loosening up a little bit and allowing you know different programs to
like they got tablets now. You can text back
yeah,
and
but I
forth,
think you
send
can visit your family like a little bit. It's different than
Right.
when it was like very harsh, especially for men. I think it was like, you know, I would hear stories when I was at prison. I would hear stories about women having like mom and child day. And it was more
Right.
like more unifying, But the dads need that love too, and the dads need to make sure that they're allowed to bond with their children,
Absolutely.
no matter if they're lifers or not. And I think that it might be as it was back then, like the mother needs to bond with the child, and but obviously what I'm saying here is that it's a parent's role, no matter if you're the mother or father. It's important. Now, if you're free, wherever you are in the world, obviously if you're still incarcerated, you should not be exempt from that.
Yeah, I tell some people, especially like when we talk some gang stuff, but my stuff when I talk gang stuff is always peace. We're killing each other for nothing. No, the same thing.
Right.
And,
It's so true.
and then some will sit here and tell me, "Oh, you ain't about it." I'm like, homie, you want to get the gun? You want to get it? Get your money. The shooting part, that's the easy part. The killing part, that's the easy part. What comes behind that? What comes behind doing 25, 45 years? What comes behind your family no longer having you there? It's a whole. It's not just you busting on this guy and I'm gonna be famous in the hood for about a week or two, and after that I'm gone. It's that whole thing that comes behind it, and I think that's a lot of things that young people they don't see it because they're just looking at the here and now.
You mentioned a couple of things about programs that I wish would have still be in place, and I was part of a couple of boxing gyms growing
nice.
up, and also in YTS a little. That I wasn't one of the main boxers, but you train and that's like an outlet,
For sure.
And I think that I know they exist here in different forms of martial arts or just classic boxing, but I think that that's one of the things that juvenile halls could also have this form of like this discipline,
Absolutely.
right? Maybe it's not boxing, but a form of discipline. But I think one thing that I have a teen court named after me in East LA, and one thing that I learned at Esteban Torres High School that they were doing was there was a program that was helping students learn about their culture and their family tree and their heritage. And I think about that, Gil, being very important about thinking of yourself as like a cog in the chain, And we never think about like those who came before us because there's no pictures of them, or maybe some stories are fading about our great whoever. But to think about like we're a connection to that past, and if they can see you now, how proud they would be. And then you think about who's going to be looking back 100 years at your life, and if that can help you motivate yourself to like, what, I want to be the best that I can do and do my part.
Leave a legacy.
Leave a legacy. That's the right word. And it's not to leave a mark on the world, but it's to be an example of what we all want from one another, right? And so,
Hey, I heard on the YouTube you had a green light from the police back in the days, man. And the is that true or no? What was that about?
A green light. What's that again?
I heard that as far as was it the COs in prison that, or was that just a?
Wait, tell me some more. I'm sorry. You're catching me off guard.
Let me look it up real quick. Let me look it up. But I definitely I was like, what? I don't know.
Had a green light on me. What?
Something like that. That's what I heard. I said, you know what? Let me ask him about that. Let me see what it was. They said, da 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 da. Oh, the prison guard union came out against Franky.
Yeah, you know what? Last week I learned, man, that a lot of things have changed, and a lot of things are still the same. You know, this campaign has reminded me a lot about my trials, my courtroom trials. And this is sort of like a trial all to itself. You know, you're testifying to the community about, you know, and they'll eventually cast a vote. You know, in one case, it's guilty, not guilty. In this other case, what I'm in now, it's about who we like, right? Who are we going to select here, right? And I was under the impression that these special interests were not in this at this level. That's a more of like a national, or they're doing other stuff. They're busy doing some other work here, right? But when I heard that my top opponent is being supported by the prison guards, I thought, I'm like, you know, the prison guards are in East LA, is how I thought about it. Like the gooners, these guards have arrived here in the 52nd, you know, with their money, with their influence. And I wonder, to some degree, it's probably to support her, but they're also, what they're doing is sending the message that they don't want someone like me to win. And it's unfortunate. It's kind of why I'm doing this, Gil. I didn't even realize that was going to motivate me, and realize that there are influences that affect systems that we rely on. I'm playing fair here. I'm just doing what I'm doing. I'm sitting here with you, as I was as a young boy at that defense table, thinking everyone in front of me is doing the right thing, you know?
Yeah, sometimes it's unfortunate, but you have people that will always look at you like if you were that person from the past, whether you did something or not. And I'll tell you something off air. The same thing's happening to us over here that we're trying to help, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, we're looked at as, that was just a cholo with, doing. Come on, brother. Yes. I'm a family man. I'm a father. I'm a homeowner in my city. I'm a business owner in my city. I'm over here trying to help out, but unfortunately, sometimes people still want to stereotype you. And
and it's interesting, man. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I feel like I'm used to these things happening, right? But I will say that I have made a conscious decision that I don't badmouth the prison guards. You never catch me talking about, bad about the guards, or when I was here or there. I'm always either uplifting them or saying, they have a tough job, or whatever. Or I don't even make them up at all. And so it's interesting to think about, like, these people, I was in their care for 20 years. And I think it's a missed opportunity. Not that I want their support or their help, but I think it's a missed opportunity that I'm an alum not from Yale again, not from Princeton, but from prison, right?
Yes.
And for them to not see me as a success story and say, look, here's someone who was in our care. Look what he's succeeded, like many others have succeeded, and he's trying to make a difference.
Well, sometimes maybe it's people are more scared of what you know than what you really say. Right. Straight up. That's what it comes down to. But yeah, you're just a classy guy all around, brother. I mean,
Thank you,
you really are, Franky. You've gone through some stuff. You're a much bigger man than me, because I would have been effing everybody else and forget about that.
No, but I will say, bro, I think about, we're bringing this up right now, but I think about, there's a counter to that, right? So I look at it like this, bro. This is a movement, and there's a lot of people who are rooting for me, and I appreciate that. And I think that when people hear that the prison guards are trying to prevent me from winning, I hope that would activate other people to say, you know what, we need to get behind Franky even more.
Absolutely,
harder,
absolutely. Well, Franky, you definitely got our support, brother.
Thank you, Gil.
For 52. Make sure you guys look at the ballot. It's gonna be on this one, right, on March.
Yep.
Franky Carrillo will be there, 52nd Assembly seat, right? look over there. Tell people where they can find you as far as your Instagram, how they can help your campaign, everything they need to know.
Well,
they can send the hate mail too.
Thank you. That's right. Thank you. So you can go to Franky Carrillo, FrankyCarrillo.com. That's my campaign website. You can find me on Franky Carrillo Jr. on Instagram. And volunteer, sign up, contribute, get involved.
Give them that Netflix show again. Maybe they can watch it.
Yeah.
Which one was it again?
So it's on Netflix. The show is called The Innocence Files, episode 4 and 5. Thank you, Gil. I appreciate you, man.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. And you guys better get out there. Start voting, man. Whether you agree with us, don't agree. Even if you don't want to vote for Frank, vote for somebody, man. Vote for somebody, because that's how we get involved. And for people who tell you voting don't count, if it didn't count, they want to spend billions of dollars trying to make you vote a certain way, man. With that, people are out. Franky Carrillo, Assembly 52. We're out.
That's right, man.